Well, it's 10 o'clock, but we are about at least 10 people short, so
It's Friday.
it's Friday. It's day 5. People are, we're over the hump, right? We have 8 days, so we're now more than halfway done.
There's a song from Melissa's childhood called It's Friday, Friday by Rebecca Black, and it's coming to my mind right now.
I don't know that one.
You're
No?
gonna sing it? Sing it for us,
Oh, why
Dan.
not? It was
Melissa,
very
you're not missing anything. I used to let my students pick songs before class, and that one played, and I no longer let them pick the music before class.
All right, well, I'm gonna have to
Down.
look that up on YouTube later.
Getting down on Friday.
Kind of a fun idea to let your students pick the music to play before class. Like that.
Well, it's
I did
Friday
something
here in the
similar.
US. I guess I'm worrying about the folks who are attending from Sweden and Ethiopia and Australia. Australia, it's going to be Saturday morning. In Sweden, it's going to be late Friday night already.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
And then-
Sina is here.
Okay.
No drinking for me last night.
You didn't go out partying with your friends?
No, we're actually back in a lockdown here. So for the next 3 days, we're locked down again.
Yeah,
Why?
I heard your numbers were going really through the roof in Australia.
In Sydney, yes. In Melbourne, it's still less than 10, but they thought we need a snap lockdown to contain it.
Mm.
Lockdowns is a concept that the US never got.
I think it depends on your state. My friends in Massachusetts felt pretty locked down, but we felt pretty locked down in North Carolina, but they didn't.
Well,
they
I think
didn't
it's a
lock down
question
really
of
so much in.
the way that you qualify that with the word felt in front of it.
That's true. It's a good point. I think people were restricted like days they could go to the grocery store even in Massachusetts, but in Texas you can do whatever you want whenever you want. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say in Alabama, unless you're at the hospital or with or had relatives that got COVID, you didn't know there was a pandemic.
Yes, we had to travel through Alabama to get to Texas, and we were quite unsettled.
I used to say that the only part of Logan that experienced the pandemic was the university. Because the rest of the town totally ignored it and sort of stayed behavior as normal.
Yeah.
Oh, not exactly. My parents didn't step out of their house in Logan for about 18 months. Coming out. Oh.
Well, that's because the rest of the main street was behaving like normal, like there wasn't a pandemic.
Exactly. That's why they didn't dare step out of their house.
All right, so it looks like we have most participants here now, so we'll just get started. Doug, I think you're leading us through the beginning today, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you can go to the next slide. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here, and it's Friday today for the first and only session because we don't have a session this afternoon. Yay! We're gonna first look at active learning in an online format, and then start getting more into the details about designing the instructional content. So by the end of today's workshop, you will have designed at least one content unit that clearly aligns with the learning objectives and the learning activities, and then also done some planning for engaging instructional content in your module outline, including text, images, video, screenshots, iframes, including resources like HydraShare, et cetera, and plan to integrate check your understanding activities to support students' comprehension of the content and assess lower level learning objectives. So we were curious in the chat, if you could just tell us what are some external resources that you think you might include in your module. So just go ahead and drop that into the chat. Videos, good. All right, Sina says map viewer and data portals, the NOAA resources. data sets, videos, online water footprint calculators, databases. Excellent, good. Oh, cool, model my watershed, awesome. Okay, great. These look like really interesting external resources to include HydroShare, CyberGIS. Awesome, good. Those are great, excellent. All right, so we'll go into the next slide. I think this is Emod's slide.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And so I guess this slide hopefully is familiar to you now. And we talked about the backward design, starting from learning objectives, and then how would you determine evidence for that through the authentic task. And then the third component of that is describing the instructional content that will support the students in implementing the authentic task and hopefully achieving the learning outcomes. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time on design instructional content and how you can do that in HydroLearn to ensure that the content that the students are exposed to is engaging enough and will prepare them to do the tasks. So next slide, please. And that's an easy slide, right? Because empty slide. So, but I guess, so this is an example from one of the modules in HydroLearn, right? This is one unit called precipitation, or one section, sorry, right? One section. And it starts with an introduction, and then there's a subsection, and then you can see here precip statistics. So you can, and then a third subsection is called ideograph and design storms. So a typical subsection we think should include a background. That's where you tell people about some of the equations, maybe a few videos, maybe just whatever you want them to learn about the topics to be able to do the activity, the theory, what have you. And then there could be an example, right? If you're trying to, if they're going to do an advanced activity, maybe you can do a simple version of that activity with a hand done calculations or simple modeling analysis. And this doesn't have to be a problem that they do. This could be something that you provide. It's almost like a solved example, right? That we did a textbook. And then there could be a tutorial if you want to, also to make things better. And then usually we recommend that you have a check your understanding, a quiz type problems, just to kind of make sure that they read those background information and they watched whatever video that you provided. And that's the last step before you hit them with the learning activity. Again, there could be a lot of variations of this structure here, but this is just a recommended one where you build some background, you walk them through some simple analysis exercises that they don't have to do on their own, and then quiz with fast facts, and then immerse them in the learning activity that will hopefully achieve the objectives. That's a typical structure of a section or a subsection, and the precept statistics or any other subsection will probably have a similar structure to that. Next slide, please. Okay, so with that, we would like to send you on a task here to, again, use the same, to look into the instructional content that we have in some of the modules. So use the same module that you looked at on Wednesday, I believe, right? Using the Google Sheet, if you remember, everybody picked a module and they came back with comments. We want you to go back to that same one and look at the instructional content there. You can pick a section or all of them, and depending on how long the module is, and dig deeper into it a little bit to kind of see does it follow the structure that I showed you today, or meaning does it have engaging content, right? And that support active learning, a mix of videos and text and equations and graphs and maybe some links, maybe some solved examples if you have there. And then hopefully that will help you build your own subsections or your own sections, right? It help you develop an engaging content. And then we also want you to put there in your spreadsheet one thing that you saw in this module that you want to integrate into your own, a good practice that you saw there, or a good element that you liked that you think you would also do it in your own module. I think with that, we are ready to move on to the next step, Melissa, right?
Yeah, so we're going to spend 30 minutes in your partner breakout rooms going through that same module like Imad just discussed, the same module you were looking at for your scavenger hunt. So what questions might you have before we send you into the rooms to work on this? And the link to the slides and the directions that are on this slide have also been put in the chat for you. All right, well, Jenny, will you go ahead and open the rooms and we'll bring you back here at about 10:40 or 40 minutes after the hour, wherever you are. And if you have any questions, feel free to stay in the room, in the main room. Otherwise, you could go ahead and join your breakout room. Starting the course. That way you're not trying to build, right? We're not building a textbook of everything, but focusing students on getting towards the assessment. So the focus of that instruction then is how are we going to get students to be able to master the material in the assessment? So when you are thinking about your instructional content, you want to start with your learning objectives. You want to think about what topics and content is covered by these objectives. You want to open your learning activity for a given section and consider, what do I need to teach my students? What content do they need so that they can successfully complete this assessment, successfully complete this learning activity, right? The idea that we're getting them from where they're starting to be able to be successful in that learning activity. And that's where that alignment comes in. So Dan was telling a story in a breakout room the other day about how his professor made them memorize all these equations and then on the exam had them apply the equations, but they had never learned how to apply the equations during the class. And I definitely took courses like that in college as well, right? And we don't want to do that to our students. If we're asking them to apply or analyze in the learning activity, then we should be showing them how to apply and analyze in the instructional content. So that's where that all of that alignment comes together. We're not going to assume some students will make the jump, but we shouldn't assume that they're all going to make that jump. So we're going to spend 20 minutes now back in our breakout rooms, looking at your learning objectives, looking at your learning activities, and looking at your module outline and thinking, do we have the right content to get students from here to here? And so you can make revisions in your model outline template. You can make revisions right in HydroLearn. I know teams have kind of diverged in how they're approaching this. So whichever way works for you, but your idea is you're coming out, what is the instructional content that we need to make sure is included? Any questions for me before we break off into our rooms? All right, Haroon.
Yes. So I think I by looking at this exercise, I just understood the difference between activity and maybe if you can help me understand if I'm. So learning activity, what they're doing, and task is what they will do after the learning activity, that as an assignment. Is that, am I looking at it correctly?
No, and so, which is good feedback for me. So maybe let's talk about that. So if I'm looking, for instance, in the snow and climate module, I think that's what I'm in. Yeah, snow and climate. So they start off this section with just an overview, but then they move into giving you some content information. So this is the instructional content, right? They're telling you about snowflakes. They have a video. The check your understandings are also, we consider part of the instructional content. They could also be considered assessments. So they're kind of building students with all of the content. All of this is considered the instructional content. That one's a long unit, right? So we're going through it. And then, wait, did I pass it? And then you get into the learning activity at at the end of that section. And the learning activity is what students are being asked to do. This was a poor example of a section for me to show you. I apologize. So let's look through section 3. So here we have the overview, the learning objectives, and then here they're getting into the content, figures, pictures, videos, diagrams, right? They're getting into all of this. They have some check your understanding, some more content, and then it builds up into the learning activity. And the learning activity is the task.
Okay, I see. So instructional material is what is given to them so that they can complete their learning activity tasks.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for helping me clarify that, Harun. Any other questions? Dina says, the way I think of it is that a learning activity is an integration of a series of tasks towards a particular learning objective. Right, so that's a good point, Sina, and maybe that's kind of what you were getting at too, Harun, that a learning activity can have multiple tasks in it. You could be asking students to do multiple things. Good point. Any other questions? So our goal here is to be, I know that you've been working on your module outline, that you've been thinking about your content, but to really revise that with the idea in mind of, is what I'm teaching students in this content going to help them be successful on the learning activity? That's your primary goal. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open the rooms. And of course, feel free to stick around here if you have a question for us. Otherwise, go ahead and jump in your rooms and all right, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully that was a productive work time. I'm hoping that you felt like we were just getting the ball rolling and then she pulled us back to the main room again. I hope you feel a little frustration with me. That was almost my goal, because my goal was to get the ball rolling, and then we're going to pull you back in and teach you a couple of things you can do in HydroLearn, so that then when we let you go for our work session this afternoon, you could just take that momentum that you got started, take some of the things you're going to learn here in a minute from Jenny, and just kind of go through the afternoon and get lots accomplished. So if you are feeling frustrated with me, I'm not insulted. That was in fact my goal. So the primary goal of HydroLearn, our primary goal, is to provide access to high quality modules that can be used as is, or that can be adapted by other instructors around the world in their courses, right? This is why we made such an adaptable system, why we changed HydroViz to be more like, to be modular, to be where anyone could get in and get an account and create and download and export and import and change. So this is our big picture goal. So I kind of wanted to reorient you to that. Because as you're creating your modules, we want you to be thinking about the fact that you're not just writing this for your own course or for the two courses that you and your partner are teaching, but you are writing this for use by other instructors. And as you're working, we want you to think to yourself, is this something that a colleague could use without my assistance? So some people have come to HydroLearn thinking of it as a place where I can upload a bunch of PDFs of the slides I've used in the past. And that's not really what we're looking for. From the modules you've been looking at, you can tell that's not what we're looking for, because someone can't just pick that up and learn from it, right? If I can't use someone else's slides without talking to them about it. So we want you to use open source textbooks and readings and softwares rather than copyrighted wherever possible. Again, talk to your content guide if there's something specific you're really looking for. And rather than just uploading a PDF of this or that, we want you to kind of put the content in your own words as much as possible. Or like we were talking about before, use videos that already exist or videos that you create to kind of make that engaging content. But the goal is that this should be really open source and available. So to give you another screenshot of this part of the HydroLearn module feedback tool, we have talked so far today, we've been really focused on these last two items, which is that your instruction should be aligned to the learning objectives, that instructional content should be aligned to the learning objectives. And then we just talked about this again, that the text and software videos be open source and freely available. And now we're going to focus on this top part. We've talked about this a little bit in looking at the content, but now Jenny is going to go through and show us how to put in the videos, check your understanding activities. She's going to show us kind of the nuts and bolts of that in HydroLearn. So Jenny, I will let you take over the screen share. As Jenny is sharing her screen, are there any questions for me about what I was just talking about with the open share and kind of our big goal?
Yeah, Jenny, I tried with another YouTube link, a link that was used in one of the other modules, but I still having the same issue with iframe. So maybe if you can show me one more time. Yeah, thanks.
So Jenny, before you jump in, I see a question from Alyssa. A question that came up in our group is how the modules might look different if the development team included a social scientist. As a social scientist, I think that's a very interesting idea. And I come from an economics background actually before I got into math ed. So I definitely think that's an interesting idea. I'd love to discuss it with you more. But obviously we're not going to bring in social scientists on day 5 of the workshop, but I definitely.
I just wanted to pin that thought so it didn't get lost. So thank you for letting me share that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. All right, Jenny, go for it.
All right. So can everyone see my slides here, Tech Talk? Okay. So as you are developing your instructional content, I find that these different component types are really the stars of the show. This is what makes those, instructional parts just a little more interesting to students. You can break up the text and re-engage them with images, videos, equations, and problems. So everything that I'm going to tell you here is in HydroLearn 101. It's embedded kind of throughout, right? Because we had you, learn about learning objectives and then do it, and then learn about an activity and then insert one. So these things are embedded throughout sections 1 and 2. But in particular, section 3 is just all tech information. And it's to me, it's the things that I consider slightly more advanced. So in that section, you would definitely come across like equations or maybe problems and quizzes and things like that. But just as a reminder, everything I'm telling you now exists elsewhere. It's in HydroLearn 101. And I actually have, let's see, Martin has a question.
Oh, this was referring to what we said before. I didn't want to interrupt you, so we talk about that some other time.
Cool, we'll table it. So I have actually made an example here for, what was it now? The images, videos, and equations are all in one spot in the module template. Now, you may notice that your module template doesn't look like this, and I apologize. It's because I got this idea yesterday. So behind the scenes, I was scrambling, making a new unit for y'all, but you can always reference it in the module template too. So a word on inserting images. There's more than one way to include an image, and the thing that influences my decision is whether or not this image needs to appear larger in a new window. If it doesn't, so let's say that it's maybe just like a landscape or something where the text on it is legible, then obviously you don't need to make it appear larger in a new window. And the quickest way to just put these images in your instructional content is to use the advanced text editor. Many of you are using this to write your text anyway. So as you're typing, you don't have to stop. You can say in the same component, just slap an image in there by using this insert edit image photo right here, the icon. And there's many advantages to the advanced text editor. Obviously, it's quick and easy to do. One of the new advancements we have is that now you can click on the image itself and like drag the edges around. And in that way, you can change the size of the image. Let me see. This one right here should be an advanced text editor. And so when I click on it, super easy for me to, just click and drag, make it larger, smaller, what have you. You can also change the alignment there and enter your caption here, which shame on me, I didn't do, but here we go. Insert edit image icon. That's what that is. So that's the cool thing about the advanced text editor. So alternatively, if you have an image that's very important, it has a lot of information on it, possibly even small text that the students have to know, you have to use the HTML text editor. That's because only in the HTML text editor can you hyperlink the image to appear larger in a new window. So in addition to using this HTML text editor, you also have to upload the image to your files and uploads because you're ultimately going to be copying the studio link right here. So I'll show you an example of what I mean by that in here. So this is an HTML text editor that I have already prepped and ready. So what I did to insert an image is I click this icon right here. I can either pick it up from my computer, and when I do that, it will automatically go to your files and uploads, which is what this is right here. But if it's already in your files and uploads, you can just search for it and it would pop right up here, or you can navigate with the pages to find the image that you wanted to insert. And so that's what I've done here. And in order to make it appear larger in a new window, what you would have to do after you copied the studio link is to come back to your image that you want to enlarge and select it. And all I did was I clicked to the right of it and then dragged my cursor over just to select it there. And then I'm going to hit the insert edit link, which is just the one that looks like a chain. Click that icon and I paste my studio URL right here. And then for target, as you open this, it does say none. So you have to remember to, use the drop down menu and select new window. And now that we've done that, I hope y'all appreciate my humor here. This teaspoon-sized dog appears larger in a new window, and now it's more of a teacup pup. Okay, thanks. I won't do that anymore. So that's images. Before I move on to videos. Oh, okay. A quick note about copyright, since we have kind of been on a roll with that today. I've left instructions for you here about how you can use Google search to narrow down images that are within the copyright that you like. So you can review the license in terms of use and reuse in Google, and you can find images that way. So let me do this. And some of you may already be familiar with this feature, but let's say I want to look up pictures of teacup puppies. Oh, look at that. It's right there. Imagine that. I believe you hit, nope, tools.
Go to images first, Jenny.
That's right. Then tools. Here we go. Usage rights. Creative Commons. There you go. Teacup puppies galore. Okay, so for real this time, before I move on to videos, do you have any questions about images?
So I just want to point out that what Jenny did was she took a Google Images search and she limited it to images that had Creative Commons licenses. So those are ones that are then openly available. The authors have said that they're openly available. So sometimes it's frustrating because it'll really limit, like you get a better range of images, right? When you're not only looking at things with Creative Commons licenses, but if we want to kind of maintain people's intellectual property, then we put that restriction on it.
Let me see here. Varun, I see your question in the chat and I don't know, and I'll get back to you. Do you still need to cite the images? Does anyone else want to speak to intellectual property? Because my answer is yes. It's
I can
always,
say, yeah, definitely. Just like in a journal article, if you borrow somebody's image and put it in there in the figure caption, you always put just a brief citation. It's annoying to have to do that, but it's good practice.
better safe than sorry.
And typically when you click on one of those images that have a Creative Commons license, the authors will tell you exactly how they want you to credit their work. Yeah, so then if you visit the page.
I mean, the best scenario is you're putting an image in from a journal article and you're citing that article, and then, you know, helps everybody get citations and stuff.
Yeah, I don't see it on that page actually, but.
Okay. Let me see. Alfonso. You'll actually see in a moment that you don't have to insert text saying that a video has closed captioning, because there is a closed caption icon in the video player itself, so people can tell.
I think that's a question about Creative Commons license, not closed captioning. Dave, do you have a thought on if you have to say that it has a closed caption, Creative Commons license?
I think that having the citations as short as you can possibly make it is probably okay. So I mean, from and just giving a URL is, I think, good enough. I mean, if anybody wants to know what that license is, they can easily go to that, and hopefully it'll make it apparent.
Eileen, your hand's up.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up, I think, on Dan's comment. So if we can't find an image in the Creative Commons, that's good. We can use one from a published source and just reference it appropriately.
You know, think about it from the point of view of the author of that article. They want their work to be cited, or they wouldn't have published it. So, and they want it to be used. So I think it's always a good idea to put a figure in from a journal article and then cite the article with a hyperlink and a URL and whatever it takes. Now, I think if you were going to publish your own article using their picture, then you would need to get permission from them. But generally in these kinds of web-based things, I'm pretty comfortable with just using and citing and linking. That makes the other scientists happy, and they're like, oh, hey, my stuff is getting used and I'm getting credit for it. What they don't like, and what you wouldn't like and I wouldn't like, is somebody using my figure and claiming it as their own and not giving me credit for it. Like, wait a second, I worked hard on that stupid figure. There might be other subtleties if you talk to your office of copyright or whatever. They might say, well, no, you absolutely have to get permission for every single thing you link to or copy. But in my opinion, just looking at from a practical, realistic point of view, authors of that material want it to be used, and they just want to be cited and given credit.
Also, the journal websites do actually have information about that, and many times they will say that under fair use guidelines, just mentioning a figure is what they expect.
Yeah.
So read what's out there on the location that you're getting the content from is sort of where it comes down to.
The trickier one is when you find somebody's teaching material that hasn't been published anywhere. It's just a nice PowerPoint they've thrown up on their website, and you want to use it and reuse it. And I think that's where people get a little sloppy and just grab somebody else's PowerPoint, because I've done it in a hurry. I'm like, oh, I really need to use this. And you taking the time to put good reference to even just the website or the individual that created the original material. It's good practice.
Okay. I remember last year, we actually dedicated like a good chunk of time to answering these copyright questions and usage rights and things. I think we may need to do that again.
I think it's on the schedule for next week.
Yeah, it's on for Monday.
Okay.
David, are you leading that discussion?
Yes.
Good.
All right. So,
Really not the blind leading the blind, but
okay. So videos. There are different ways that you can do videos. The way that I recommend is using either the iframe tool or the HTML text component, because it most reliably pulls the closed captioning transcripts from YouTube. So add an iframe. Everyone is pretty familiar with that by now. You do the add new component, iframe, edit it in the HTML, and then you can just simply paste the embed code that you get from YouTube. And I wish I had one of those pulled up. Maybe I do. See if this works. So right click your video, and then you would hit this one right here. The copy embed code is what works for iframes and HTML text boxes. And I bring up an HTML text box because you can just, edit it in HTML and then paste that embed code. And then you can have your lines of text, video, and then lines of text really condensed, rather than maybe taking more time to split them into separate components. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So I have 3 examples of the same video on this page. So I hope you all like TED Talks. But you'll see here, this little line right here just denotes that this is the end of a component. So here's the top and here's the bottom. This is the video component that I used, and it didn't pull in closed captioning despite the settings options. I think that's a bug that is going to get worked out later. No promises. But here's the iframe tool used as a video player. And with this one, you can see there might be a little more gap in the text than you may like, compared to this, where this is a bit more streamlined. If you like working in the HTML text editor, this works pretty well. Just to speed things up as you are typing up all of your instructional content. So this is the top of this component, and then there's the bottom here. So that is videos. Yes. Would anyone like to see a demonstration on how to do a video in either the iframe or the HTML text? You guys show of hands, thumbs up, or something of the like. Otherwise, I will move on. Okay. Let me do this. So starting from scratch, I'm going to go to HTML. Well, excuse me. Add new component, HTML, text, right here. Click edit. Now I'm inside the component. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's great. Now I'm going to do edit in HTML. This pops up, and I am going to insert that embed code I just had. Narrow that a little bit. Okay, everything looks good here. There it is. And then you can click, you can come back. You don't have to remain in HTML if you're not comfortable with it. You can come back to this regular view of the editor and go about your day. So that is how you use the HTML text editor for videos. Okay. Any other questions for me about videos? Okay, moving right along to equations. So this is a super high level introduction to equations. There is so much more detailed information in HydroLearn 101 in section 3. And I'll show you exactly where. Oh, it's in section 2. I'm wrong. So in section 2, developing course content and then equations is, I've provided a table, actually a downloadable file of some example codes and how it renders. Yep, and you can download that from this site here. In HydroLearn 101. Obviously, they're written in LaTeX, whatever you want to call it. And you can put equations into the HTML text or the advanced text. It doesn't matter, it works perfectly the same in either one. And so this is an example equation. So you have these slides. I'll also give this to you in the chat box if you want to try it out yourself. So this is what the equation, this is how I would type it up. This is what I would see inside my editor, but then when it saves, it'll render. And there's just slight differences in the way that it looks compared to the HTML or the advanced. So let me show you an example of the equation, which is down here. So, video. So this is an advanced text editor that I decided to use. And this is the equation. Obviously, I had to put spaces in here. Otherwise, it would just automatically, look like the equation for you. So here's one with spaces, so you get an idea of what it looks like behind the scenes. You remove the spaces, it actually renders as an equation when you hit save. And so there you go, the equation right there. Oh, really? That's cool. Thanks for sharing that, Martin. So yeah, if you have any questions about LaTeX, you can direct them towards Martin. Just kidding. Any questions for me about equations?
So I have a question, Jenny. So basically, these / square bracket tag is where we embed our LaTeX code, and we can just use all of the LaTeX equation capabilities within those tags, and that would render the equation.
Absolutely, yeah. So let me separate these. So I taught myself everything I know about this, so I don't know the terminology, the lingo, what have you. But if you put whatever you call these things, that's what, yeah, you're right. That's what you put your equation into to make it work. So all of this is what's rendered, and obviously these little bits are not, the end caps, if you will. Does this have a technical term?
I think they're called markups. Markups.
Okay.
It's a markup language, so they're called markups.
Good to know. Thank you. So next up on the agenda is actually problems. And quizzes is not a term, an official term used by edX or Studio. I just adopted that term to mean a string of different types of problems in one component. So this you do have in your module template. You have a check your understanding page where I have provided an example of how I created a quiz, right? So all I did was I come in here, I edit, and I steal the code of the problem that I want. And where do I get that? Well, glad you asked. In HydroLearn 101, there is a downloadable file for you that has all of them in one place. So you don't have to do this, but if you want, this is what I did. If I say I wanted a checkbox, for example, I would edit. I would just go to advanced, okay. And I'd take all of this. And then I would go back up to this component and just add it in between these problem tags here. So I need to get rid of that one. That works. Okay. Oh, actually, that was cool. So you'll notice if you made a mistake when your text appears red. So that's always pretty handy. You know that you made a mistake on the line above. If I save it, you'll now see that there's multiple problems in here. Now, so that is a quiz, which is really not that much different than just inserting one problem if you wanted. Does anyone have questions about problems? I feel like you're all pretty well versed. I've seen a lot of these being used already. Is there anything in the chat? Oh, okay.
So it looks like the only difference between doing it as a quiz or separate problems is how often a student hits submit, right?
Yeah. And also you can make these worth, more points. If you decide that you wanted to assign points and grade these, you can do that too. So if this one has a few problems, it's going to be worth a few more points than, just one. And I think that covers my talk for today. Yep. Arun?
This question might be related to something that you are going to talk about in future, is how do we get the scores of students from these submissions? So if you're going to talk about it, you can ignore my question.
You'll just have to anxiously await our future presentation because yes, we do cover that. Anything else? I will take your silence to mean that you are now all studio wizards. Congratulations.
And of course, Jenny's always around during our work time for you to ask her any questions if you're encountering any difficulties as you work on these things.
All right, I'll stop sharing so you can take over.
Thanks. Jenny, would you put the Poll Everywhere link in the chat, please?
Yep.
So we're 5 days in, which means we're more than halfway through our 8-day workshop. Of course, we have planned some activities for next week, but we would also like to know what topics you would like us to cover or revisit next week, because it may be that some of the things we have planned, you maybe that you have ideas for things that we haven't already planned. That's what I meant. So go ahead and Jenny put the poll everywhere link in the chat. And if there's any topics you'd like us to cover next week or even to revisit, go ahead and put those in your poll. Excellent. HydroShare Jupyter integration is on the schedule for Monday. Perfect. I'm sure that's not the only thing you're all are curious about.
But that is something that we will cover next week. We being me.
Importing sections from existing HydroLearn courses. Happy hour. I like that idea. Timelines. Excellent point. Revisit constructive alignment. You know I'm not going to let that one go. How many of us use textbooks? And if we do, what open source textbooks are recommended? I feel like that one might be Martin. We will come back to that for sure.
And I believe the last day we do provide you like a checkout process overview so you know what's coming after the conclusion of the workshop.
Mm-hmm. The more of the complicated check your understandings, like those maybe the drag and drop questions or some of those cooler formats. Yeah, we could definitely do a session on that. All right. So I'm going to stop that here, but as we go forward, if you have other ideas, feel free to drop them in the chat for us or shoot us an email, and we want to make sure that we cover all the questions that you have before the conclusion of the workshop. All right, so we're going to go ahead into your breakout rooms now. We want you to be set as a personal goal to build at least one instructional content unit in HydroLearn, one unit per set of partners. And then as you're thinking about that, think about your learning objectives and what check your understandings might you ask, what content might you want to integrate, videos, images, data sets. And then, oh, I actually should have deleted this last one. You don't need to email us because we will be around here and checking in on your rooms. Today is a half day, so we have one more hour that will be around with the Zoom call open. Although if you want to continue working with your partner beyond that, of course, you are welcome to. Any questions before we head off into our rooms for today? And just to clarify one more time, we're not coming back here in an hour to share in our content groups. Today you'll work and then head off to enjoy the rest of your weekend. So any questions before we open the rooms? As always, feel free to hang out in the main room if you have a question. And the breakout rooms are now open, so you can head into your breakout rooms. If you're in one of David's groups, hopefully you saw his message in the chat.